This is going to be a little bit of a slow walk. The number one question that I've been getting over the past few days is, of course, how am I feeling? It's about a little under 2 weeks since my second lung surgery. Excuse my cough, but that kind of should indicate how I'm feeling, in that there's still some ways to go. I feel, in terms of pain and things like that, I feel fine. A lot of the surgery was pretty standard as far as things go these days. The thing that is the challenge right now is basic lung capacity. Although core function came up really quickly, in fact much more quickly than it did the first time, the basic ability to go beyond that initial function, that's been a bit of a challenge. In fact, you should notice that I'm walking really slowly because I can't go any faster. I do hit my ceiling, and at the worst of times I've had a situation where I think I was actually approaching being low on oxygen, maybe not at some disastrous level, but not at a healthy level. And at that point I started getting headaches and a bit of nausea and things like that, and had to sit down. Anyways, it's all part of the process of getting back up to a reasonable state. But as you can see, I can do a bit of walking. So I'll start this video with about as much as I can. But overall, I feel good. I do. And part of it is because that second surgery kind of concluded a pretty notable stage in my progression through this illness. So for now, in terms of any of the known malignancies in my body, everything's out, like literally out through surgery, and not just suppressed somehow through chemical or other means. So that's good news. So in many sense, I get a bit of a fresh start, and we go from there. So in some sense, a lot of us get used to thinking about, well, am I going to get 25 more years, 20 years, 5 years, 6 months? I don't know. The weird thing about cancer is every time something significant happens, like it just did with the surgery treatment, time tends to reset. Because it occurred to me the other day that it's about exactly 2 years since I first got my diagnosis through a stool sample test and then a colonoscopy and yada, 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 and I got diagnosis fairly quickly. It's been about 2 years, so I've been living with this thing for 2 years, and yes, there's been major stuff through it. 3 surgeries, plus chemo, plus all the other elements related to my personal life. But it doesn't feel like I have been through it for 2 years. It actually feels like it's now time zero. In fact, everything that's happened in the past goes away. And this isn't a philosophical thing. This is more of, okay, well now I have to focus on where life goes from this point on, now that I have had this surgery. So it actually is not necessarily productive to really think about everything that's happened before. It really doesn't matter. From this point on, even if I were to want to think about time projections, it's about where do we go from here? How long do I have left from this point? It's a weird feeling. It's kind of like if you know a little bit about calculus, Zeno's paradox, and generally means that it really doesn't matter the entirety of the journey. It's only the stuff going forward in terms of the time factor. So I'm always dealing with a small amount of time, because who knows when the next treatment will be, when the clock resets again. And that's kind of it can be a bit of a demotivating perspective for sure. And there have certainly been moments when I have thought about that in a very demotivating or unmotivated way. Having said that, and as you know, if you've been watching these videos, I spend an awful lot of time also reflecting on the things that have been very good for me, whether it's goodness from a long past, careers, families, achievements, that sort of things, or good things from the short past, like what happened with the eclipse yesterday. Kind of waiting for 50 years for this to happen, for this exact eclipse to happen, because I kind of read about it when I was a kid, and I hoped that I would still be alive when it finally comes to pass, and indeed I am alive. And we went to Niagara Falls. The weather was shit, but who cares? It went really dark and people freaked out, and we had a nice lunch. We found a couple of eccentric people to chat with, and we had a classic Tom and Sharon road trip of a day. It couldn't have been more perfect. It really doesn't seem to matter as much whether I have 50 years ahead, 20 years ahead, 10, 5, 2, because it'll all seem like a year or so that's passed, because time keeps resetting every time something big has to happen. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is a thing. It is something that I've had to deal with. And on a good day, which is most days these days, it is a good thing, and it helps me keep going, because I know I don't have to worry about whether I have 200 years ahead of me, 150, 50, 5, 2, 18 seconds. It really doesn't matter, because there's so many things to be occupied by and to deal with at the moment. And largely these days I'm retired, I have a wonderful family. Most of those things are pretty good. So I guess it's good news. I am back to doing some of the things that I used to enjoy doing, and walking being a very important part of that. Looking forward, who knows? Sharon and I had assumed that because of the second surgery and the nature of that treatment, that we'd actually have a great summer, and where I wouldn't have to deal with any significant medical issues. Still hopeful for that, but as you know, things happen, and we will see what happens from this point on. So with that, it feels great to be back. Too bad about the eclipse, but certainly the day was well worth it, and everything about it was a wonderful experience. So at this point, probably shouldn't walk too much further, or I won't be able to make it back. So I am going to do a complete U-turn, turn back around, and go back home. So this has been a pretty good and non-stressful walk for me. Hopefully I make it home. I'm sure I will. And I will see you again very soon. Bye.